of the comic book world were very much heard throughout the film. Because again, that's literally where that was the germ, where everything came from. So yeah, there was some from the very beginning that was the plan.
I'm sorry, I'm going to just be more effusive here, and it's going to start getting embarrassing. But I think this is kind of a big subject, so you could have spent a lot of time on the history, and I just think you get all of that in such a succinct way, and you just get to get the fun. You get the exposition that you need, and I don't even remember how, but I just I love this movie. Okay.
What was your experience with the con prior to making the movie?
I'd only been to one Comic-Con before we made this film, and it was the year before. I was hired in 2009 to do the Simpsons 20th anniversary special for Fox, and I'd always wanted to go to Comic-Con, was never able to go. And the minute we got the phone call from Fox that this was moving forward and we were making the special, I was like, we're going to Comic-Con. I was like, we're going to Comic-Con, we're going to go there, we're going to cast for Simpsons super fans, we're going to so that was the whole plan. So we went down there and we set up this kind of American Idol-esque casting, to have people come in and like profess their love to us, and there was myself and Al Jean and Matt Selman, who were all sitting at this kind of American Idol-esque table. As people would come in dressed as Homer, or do voices and talk about why they loved Homer Simpson so much. And this guy came in during the audition one day, painted head to toe in red liquid latex. Like he basically had a pair of skivvies that were painted over, but everything else was like his body, his naked body painted over in red latex that had been sealed to his body, and he had some fake teeth in, and it was like black and things sticking out of him, and he says, I love Homer Simpson, you understand, this show means the world to me, this is the greatest thing that changed my life. And so he keeps going on, and then he finishes, and I was like, okay, that's amazing, but what's all this about? And he goes, oh, like he forgot. And he goes, I'm Carnage. You know Carnage. I was like, oh no, I know the Carnage. I know, and I'm familiar. And he goes, yeah, so that's what I dressed up as, and like this morning, my wife, she helped me get dressed. Like she painted this all over me, and then she and the kids drove me here and dropped me off. And I was like, wait a second, they dropped you off? And he goes, yeah, they don't really get it. At that moment, I was like, there is such a great story to be told about this place. And later that night, the most amazing thing happened. I was at a party for CAA, which is my agency, and it's also Stan Lee's agency. And so I see Stan Lee across the room, and his agent said, would you like to meet Stan? And I was like, oh my God, absolutely. And so I go over and I introduce myself, and I say, Mr. Lee, as a kid growing up in West Virginia, you got to understand, like reading your comics just like changed my life as a kid. Like your stories gave me the courage to want to write my own stories and kind of tell my own stories. I said, you really, like your work means a lot to me. I mean, it changed my life. And he says, oh, Morgan, thank you. It's so nice of you to say. You know what? We should make a movie together. We should make a documentary. We should make a documentary about Comic-Con. And I said, yes, we should, Mr. Lee. I shook his hand and I turned around, and behind me was Peter Michelli, who's an agency, a big giant of a man. I turn around and Peter says, so how was the meeting Stan? I was like, it was amazing. We want to make a movie about Comic-Con. And he's like, that's a great idea. You should meet my other client who's coming into town tomorrow. So cut to tomorrow, as I was having breakfast with Joss Whedon at the hotel next door. And by that point, we kind of thought out what the movie would be a little bit. Like we said, we'll follow characters in. Here's some of the archetypes that we'll look for. So I told Joss the idea, and Joss said, he goes, done, I'm in. He goes, I would love to be a part of this. So then I call up Mark, a friend of mine, Mark Whitelarde, and Mark is on the board of trustees. I'd met him the year before. So I called up Mark, I said, where are you? I said, I want to come find you right now. So I tracked him down in the top of the convention center where they set up office, the folks from Comic-Con do. And I told him, the story about I met Stan, and met Joss, we want to make a movie, we want to come shoot here next year. And Mark says, Mark has worked now for Comic-Con for about 25 years. And he said, I've been here 2 decades. And he goes, more than 2 decades. He goes, and every year someone's come here pitching this idea, wanting to make this movie, tell the story of Comic-Con. He goes, and every year we've said, absolutely not. He said, but this time, it might work. Yeah. And it was amazing. And then a year later, there we were making this film. It was amazing. I think that they're incredibly protective, just as even the Geeks and Nerds, we've been thrown under the bus for years. It's like, I see it's like, oh great, let's have another person come in here. And you, Spurlock, great idea. I'm sure but that's the thing, had I not had Stan and Joss on board, they never would let me make this film. This film never would have happened. I think that once Stan and Joss were on board, kind of this old guard, new guard, lords of geekdom, they kind of gave this film their seal of approval and support. I mean, I think that really made the difference.
Good question.
Yes, the
I mean, well, because when we were sending out the casting notices, one of the things we were casting for was we wanted to find a couple that fell in love because of their kind of shared passion for all things geeky, whatever it may be. You know, whether you both love Star Trek or you both, collect Smurfs or whatever it may be, who knows. And so we wanted to find people who kind of had this shared passion. And so we started getting all these videos in, and then we got this video of James Darling talking about how they met. And James says, they're talking about, that a year ago they met at a coffee shop in Santa Barbara where they live, and he walked in and there she was looking at her catalog for Comic-Con, and he had just gotten his catalog, and he's like, "You're going to Comic-Con? I'm going to Comic-Con. I'm going to Comic-Con." So they sat down and they started talking about all the things they wanted to see. They ended up going to Comic-Con together with their friends. Then they ended up falling in love, moving in together, and then at the end of the video after it was over, it cuts to James Darling as he turned it back on in another room in a closet. He's like, "Oh, why I really want to come is because I want to propose to say at the convention." And I was like, "Done. This guy's it. This is so happening." So they knew we were following them because they were young lovers. They were people who fell in love because of Comic-Con, and they knew that was a story. But she had no idea about any of the rest of it. As James was tracking down how to get in touch with Kevin Smith. We didn't help anybody. We didn't help him at all. He talked to a friend of his who once interned on a movie that Kevin Smith directed that got him in touch with Kevin Smith's assistant, and who got Kevin to get on board with the whole thing. He went online and found the Lord of the Rings maker to make the wedding ring for him.
I was convinced that he was going to change his mind. That's where I thought that was going.
And she's sitting there going, that place we ate, it's like a spaghetti factory. But it wasn't a spaghetti factory. That place is good. In that moment, you just knew him going, I could walk out of this room right now. I could leave right now. God, why do those cameras have to be here?
I have to say, for such a soft-spoken guy, he owns that room when he goes there.
He did.
I just couldn't believe it. And Kevin handles the whole situation so beautifully. It's a great scene. Holly, did you meet any of the other folks?
Oh yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, yeah, I've become friends with them.
Holly just worked on a film. Holly just worked on a film with James and Saya.
No.
Yeah.
Well, what they do?
James actually a super talented editor, and Say did art direction, and I did production design, and it was a live action short, and I did all the creatures and monsters and everything, and actually my whole team actually worked on them with it, or with the whole thing.
So when they get their Oscar, you're going to get thanked. That's a beautiful. No, not so much. It's a beautiful story. We actually, speaking of couples, do we have a couple here that actually met in the back? They actually won tickets to go to our screening, and they met and.
Met at Comic-Con or met and fell in love because of your deep love?
Oh boy. Didn't expect this. No, we've been dating for a while, and I've always said, there's no way I'm ever going to find somebody who's into Comic-Con as I am. I've been going for about 12 years, and I always meet up with some friends from my childhood. And so we've been dating for about a year, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to Comic-Con. You don't have to come. It's okay.
And then I got mad at him for not immediately offering me the ticket.
So she came along, and that's, and she skipped the first year, but the second year we went together, and that's when I kind of went, okay, I think she's the one.
I have to ask you a question, and I'm sorry, I know this is really probably inappropriate, but when in the bedroom, do you dress up as superheroes? I'm just curious. You don't have to answer that. I know the answer. Thank you for coming. We have another question. In the back somewhere? Right here.
Holly, what materials do you use for your costumes?
Oh gosh, I used lots of different things. That suit was actually mostly fiberglass, so it was sculpted in Chavant clay onto a mannequin, and then molded in silicone, and then plaster a fiberglass jacket, and then cast back up in fiberglass. And sometimes I used foam, different kinds of foams, and different latex and things like that. Grunt was made out of foam latex, so it looked like skin, so that was a whole different process. But it's really whatever works for the certain costume is most important.
Are you living here now?
Yeah, actually, I live downtown, yeah.
Oh, you do? And to say Young and James, they live here as well?
I think actually I might be moving to LA, but they do live in Santa Barbara, which is super close.
Right, of course. Oh, great. Let's take just one or two more. There you go.
That was you saw him in the beginning. That was Ben. He was him and I. We actually collaborate on all the animatronic projects. Tank does the programming. I do all the sculpting and painting and art parts, and then Ben will kind of sit there and be like, all right, we're gonna sculpt this fold a certain way so that the skin will move this way, and we kind of work on it together. And then when I finish sculpting it, then we go and we mold it and all that, and he animates it from pretty much the inside out. So he actually taught himself how to do the animatronics just for this project. Because we worked together, we did figure finishing, which was like, making like suits and things like that for animatronic characters and all that, but he had never done it before, and that was his first project. And mine too, so it was crazy.
Okay.
I'm just curious, when you did all the little interstitial interviews on the white background, you noticed that a number of people didn't have shoes on. Was there a specific
I think only Thomas Jane didn't have shoes on. No, I think. Oh, Kevin Smith didn't have shoes on either. That's true. We started fast. Thomas Jane was a little drunk, so so that explains why he didn't have shoes on. I think Kevin Smith took his shoes on because what we were doing is we would usually put like a plank for them to walk out into the middle of the site and then pull it back. That way you didn't see footprints on the white site. And so I think that we kind of put that out, and Kevin Smith, I'll just take my shoes off, and I think he took his shoes off and then walked out barefoot onto the site, and I think that's why he's barefoot.
The site is the curved background. All right, let's take two more. One here.
In your discussions with the collectors, do you think there's any difference between collectors of these kind of comics or toys as opposed to baseball cards or military relics? Or?
I think people who collect things, are gatherers. I think there's people who feel an affinity towards something and want to have a deeper relationship with whatever that may be, whether it is a baseball card or an action figure or a comic book. There is some sort of I think there's some sort of like a collecting OCD that also comes with that. I collect a lot of like street art, and pop art, and I am you do become very addicted when things come out, like things that you seek out that you want to find. You want to kind of make sure you have all of them to finish like a set. There is like a real you do start to get uncomfortable when you don't have certain things. I mean, it's very weird. But I think and one of the things that I was on the phone today talking to like a sports network. Because jocks always love to make fun of geeks. And even today I was on the phone with like a sports radio station and they were saying how, all those weird nerds out there. And I said, just to kind of throw this out there, what's different from a guy, putting on a superhero costume and going to Comic-Con, and like say one of your listeners like painting his face and going to a Giant game and taking his shirt off.
Actually, the difference is like 8 beers probably.
And he goes, all right, you got a point there. Because you do start to understand it's being passionate about something, and that's whether you are so loyal to a sports team or so loyal to DC or Marvel, there is a real line of loyalty that you have to certain things.
Is there a rivalry between do the people in the Dark Horse booth and people in the Marvel booth get into a scrap?
No, more kind of DC Marvel. They're like it's like West Side Story. They kind of walk down the aisles.
Really?
Yeah. But they don't. But a lot of people don't have that much rhythm. It's kind of like.
Look, this movie obviously is going to appeal to people who are of this world, and since there's so many people in this group that aren't, I just really want to insist, if you enjoyed this movie as much as I did, tell your friends about it, tweet about it, write about it. It opens this weekend. We need to get people out there to see it.
And it's not just coming out in theaters. Like it's playing at the Santa Monica Limley. But one of the things I wanted to do when my last film, Greatest Movie Ever Sold, came out. Thanks. You were the 3 people who saw it. The film, we got a tremendous amount of press for that movie. Like the film we got blown out in the media, and then when the film opened, it was on 18 screens, like nationwide. So like 99% of the country couldn't even see the movie. And so I said, I do not want to release a movie like this again. I said, I want to make sure, like in my hometown of Beckley, West Virginia, where I grew up, I still have yet to have a movie that I've ever made play in my hometown. Like that. And so how do you cater to the people that want to see these films that they're hearing about or reading about or seeing people on Conan O'Brien? How do you make those things accessible to people? So what we've done is we've completely collapsed our windows. So the movie will be opening in select theaters across the country, but it'll also be on demand nationwide tomorrow. So video on demand all across the country. It'll be streaming on iTunes starting tomorrow. You can download it on your Xbox starting tomorrow. It'll be worldwide on iTunes tomorrow. I mean, I wanted to make sure that anyone who wanted to see this film after hearing about the press would see it. So if you like it, you can watch it again, have a little Comic-Con party at your house, So I just want to make sure people can enjoy it everywhere.
So you have a mission: leave here and spread the word. Morgan, thank you for a great film. Ollie, thank you for coming. So nice to meet you. Thank you.